everyone, and welcome back to Guitar by Emily. Today is an all Steve Vai themed video, and I cannot wait for this one. If you've been around for a second, you know that Steve Vai is my favorite guitar player. So in honor of his birthday, which if this is coming out Friday, June 7th, then this will be one day after his birthday on June 6th. So happy birthday, Steve Vai. I wanted to do this video just to get to talk about Steve himself and his work with different bands. And I also want to show you some of my Steve memorabilia because I have quite a bit around this room that you guys have not seen before. And also just to get to maybe talk about just a little bit some of the experiences I've had meeting Steve Vai, although I do have separate videos on the different concerts I've been to, so if you want to see an in-depth, talk through of a Steve Vai concert, then I can link those down below. Definitely took some inspiration from Steve for the hairstyle today. I've got like the braids like he did in Whitesnake, all wavy, and of course I've got my Steve Vai jacket. Painted by Red Star Daria. The back is super cool, so I'm going to insert a picture so you guys can see this thing in all of its glory. So yes, today, all Steve Vai, so make sure you like and subscribe and you leave me a comment down below, and let's get into all this. I think it's going to be a really fun day. We got a lot to talk about, but it's just going to be a fun sit down and chat about such an amazing guitar player. First off, I thought it might be kind of fun to just go through a little bit of Steve Vai's history throughout his early career and with different bands. This is going to be very brief, so I'm not going to bore you guys with a history lesson, but there are some things about Steve Vai that when I learned them, I was kind of like, oh, that is so cool, and I didn't know it, so probably most of my audience knows Steve Vai history, but if you don't, this could be really fun and you might learn some things that you haven't known. So if I get anything a little bit wrong, guys, give me a break, okay? It's been a long time. I've researched this a lot in the past, but it's been a minute since I've kind of checked up on all of it. So I'm just going to talk from what I know, and if you guys want to correct me in the comments, you can. So I do believe Steve Vai started playing guitar when he was 12 years old, which is young, but not as young as some guitar players, and he absolutely fell in love with the instrument. I do believe he was playing a couple other instruments before that, but none of them really clicked, and when he first got a guitar, that was, of course, he knew that that was correct. That was his instrument. After he bought his first guitar at a pawn shop, he took the guitar to a local young guitar teacher, Joe Satriani, to take guitar lessons. Now this was very interesting because I just attended a Vai show with Joe and Steve, and I was at the VIP Q&A, and I got to ask a question what it was like Joe teaching Steve, and it was very interesting to hear their answer. Joe said it was just so marvelous to watch Steve grow and learn, and he said he very quickly became as good as he was at the time. Steve, of course, had just started playing, and Joe was teaching some students at that time, but I do believe Joe was about 15, so they don't have a huge age gap, and Steve was practicing like 12-15 hours a day, so he was becoming so good so quickly. And he also commented on how technical of a player he was. He wanted everything he did to be right, and when Joe gave him something to work on, he would work on it and work on it and work on it until it was absolutely perfect with no mistakes. I think there's something to be learned in that. You can take learning something or an instrument as far as you want to. You can be as serious about it as you want to, and that isn't to discount, that you have life. We all don't have that much time in our lives to be spending on, practicing guitar, but I think that we do waste a lot of time. Life gets busy and then we end up kind of just slacking off a little bit. So a little bit of a lesson to be learned from Steve Vai, that the more work you put in, the more you're going to progress and the faster you're going to get to the goals that you want to reach. So Steve Vai is, learning from Joe, teaching himself a lot. And then I think in 1978, that sounds right, Steve Vai sent in some transcriptions of a Frank Zappa song, and I think a recording of his college band, and Zappa was impressed with Steve, so he put him on the payroll to transcribe songs for him. That was a big job at the time, and there were a lot of inaccurate transcriptions, and he was, a fan of Steve's work. So that is kind of how he got started with Zappa, and as that relationship continued between those two, I'm not sure exactly how he ended up auditioning for the band, but he did, and he ended up in Frank Zappa's band. I think he played with them for quite a while. I'm gonna look it up because I'm not sure. Okay, so Steve did leave Zappa in 1983, so he worked with Zappa for a couple years. That was a huge break for Steve. I mean, that was, you know, his entrance into this entire world of rock and roll. I know in this time, Steve Vai was working on Flexible, his first album, and he did release that. I think Flexible came out in 1984? 1984? I'm trying to remember all this stuff right now, guys. This is a little bit hard. So 1984, Flexible came out. I'll put, if I'm wrong and I end up looking this stuff up, I'll put it on the screen or you guys can comment. So Flexible comes out. I also remember that Steve filled in for Yngwie for Alcatrazz before he moved on to some other bands. So that was probably around the 1984-5 range. During this time, Steve also appeared in a movie which, if you guys have not seen the movie Crossroads, then I recommend you go watch it right now because it's such a fun movie, and Steve Vai plays Jack Butler, the devil's guitar player, and he just does a really good job in the part. I don't even think he even speaks in the movie. He was originally hired just to play the guitar parts for the epic guitar duel at the end of the movie, but after the director spent some time with Steve and saw him playing the song, he knew this is our guy, this is Jack Butler. And although Steve was a little bit reluctant to take the part as an actor, he didn't want to be really seen as the actor type. He didn't want it to discredit himself as a serious musician, but he did take the part, and I think that was definitely smart because it got him a little bit into the mainstream as far as media. You know, the movie had Ralph Macchio in it, so it was popular, and that definitely got Steve out there a little bit. And after that movie, it had people asking, who is Jack Butler? And I need to know who this man is. After that movie, Steve Vai actually appeared in Guitar World magazine, and that sealed the deal. Different bands out there were looking for guitar players. They wanted the youngest, the hottest, the best guitar player out there, and what do you know? David Lee Roth is looking for that, and he finds Steve Vai. So David Lee Roth, put this in perspective, has just left Van Halen. He is trying to make a big splash into the rock and roll world without his band and the famous Eddie Van Halen. So he is looking for the best he can find out there, and he finds Steve Vai. I believe it was the best choice for the band. I really think that Steve, for the time, fit well into the David Lee Roth band. I definitely don't think it would have worked long term. Steve has talked about this. They creatively really couldn't continue much past what they did, but I believe it worked out very well. And I'm not putting Steve and Eddie like at a guitar battle. I can't do that. Eddie is too good, Steve is too good. But that was the purpose of bringing Steve into the David Lee Roth band, was to kind of battle Eddie in a way, but there's no way to compare those two, so I'm just going to not even have that conversation. Steve Vai stayed with the David Lee Roth band for a little bit. He was with that band from 1985 to 1989 when they just eventually wanted to leave for creative differences. During this time, David Lee Roth released several MTV music videos, so that was getting Steve out there as well. Not that Steve wasn't mainstream, but he also wasn't as known as some other guitarists at the time. He's still kind of coming up. So the MTV exposure was great. David Lee Roth band really got him into the 80s hair metal scene and allowed him to kind of just be crazy and wild like Steve is, and we love him for it. During the time that he was with the David Lee Roth band, he was working on the Ibanez gym design, which I am eternally grateful for the Ibanez gym. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the video, but yeah, I would like to mention that during this time he was working on that. He officially, I think, began working with Ibanez in 1986, and that is when they kind of really started working on the production ideas for the gym. First production of the Ibanez gym was in 1987, so this guitar has been around for a really long time, and I think it couldn't have come out at a better time for guitars. You know, this guitar was perfect for the 80s, and you know, it really provided something different for guitar players at this time. Okay, before I get into Passion and Warfare, because all this stuff is kind of overlapping, Steve did a lot of things at one time. I do want to talk about my favorite Steve Vai era, which is the Whitesnake era. Steve Vai was with Whitesnake for a very short amount of time. I believe it was like 89, 90, maybe 91, but I think it was really just like one tour. But he did come in because Adrian Vandenberg had a hand injury, kind of just came up, I believe, and he was unable to play all of the parts for the album coming out, Slip of the Tongue, and he was unable to play all the parts for the tour. So they knew they needed, a guy to come in and be a really awesome guitar player, and I think Whitesnake needed Steve Vai at this time. I'm not saying that their other guitar players weren't great, but I think Whitesnake has been known for a bluesy, kind of more of a 70s, early 80s sound, and I think that Steve Vai brought the hair metal into Whitesnake. I think that it needed it. I think it brought Whitesnake back in like another era of Whitesnake, and I think that they needed him, and I think it was such an amazing time for the band. That's kind of why Whitesnake is one of my favorite bands. I have heard Steve talk about his entrance into the band. He talks about how he was a bit of a rock and roll diva. He was not the nicest team player to Adrian Vandenberg, the other guitar player. But by the end of the tour, they were friends. They were able to kind of, make up. Steve was definitely arrogant. He will tell you that he was. And I think that's just part of being young, being thrown into such a prestigious band, kind of everything just snowballing and him becoming famous quickly. You kind of have to learn, and he did learn. He will admit it now that he could have been a little more humble during those times, but it also kind of gave him that attitude that people liked and people liked to watch on stage. So it's definitely all part of the experience, and I think Steve did really well with that band. And I would like to mention, because some people don't mention this, Adrian Vandenberg wrote all the parts, the guitar parts for Slip of the Tongue. Steve Vai came into the studio and played them. I'm sure he changed some things, but I don't want to give Steve all the credit for the work on that album. Adrian did some incredible work as well. He did a lot, pretty much all the work for setting the album up in the studio, so he definitely is, responsible for all of that awesome guitar work, and then Steve just came in and added his flair. Behind the scenes of all of this work with these bands, Steve Vai was working on probably his biggest album to ever be released, which is Passion and Warfare, which probably, it's hard to tell, but probably is my favorite Steve Vai album. He was working on this album from 1985 to 1990, and the album was released in 1990, and that was, I believe, the year he departed from Whitesnake after their tour was finished. But Passion and Warfare was a little bit different in regards to instrumental guitar music. It was still rock and roll. It had all the flair that everyone loved from the rock music, but it was instrumental. But Passion and Warfare was mainstream. It was a little bit more recognized than some other instrumental guitar work, and that is kind of what continued to just rocket Steve Vai into, the fame and the attention that he receives now. This album was revolutionary. No one had really done anything like this, and I know there's been instrumental albums before this, but you gotta realize I'm the biggest Steve Vai fan there is. So I'm probably going to just sing his praises, and everything he does is awesome. So in my opinion, Passion and Warfare was the biggest game changer for instrumental music. It was so innovative at the time. I think it's just the blend of the rock and roll with the instrumental, but it still feels so musical, and it feels like a song, and you feel like you're going on this journey with this music, but there are no words, but you feel the emotions from it. So Passion and Warfare, outstanding, absolutely amazing. So we're only at 1990, and Steve Vai has done all of this amazing work. Passion and Warfare obviously is what skyrocketed his solo career. At this time, I feel like Steve was thinking that he was prepared to go on his own. He needed those bands in the beginning, I personally think, to get himself into the pop culture, to get his name out there. No one's really gonna care about an up-and-coming instrumental guitarist at this time. Everyone's about the hair metal. They're about the MTV, all of the excess of the 80s. So Steve Vai needed that little step up with those bands to get him where he needed to be to make his solo career as successful as it was. Another little fun fact is in 1990, Steve Vai released the first 7-string Universe guitar. So, you know, when 87 with the Gem and then 90 with the 7-string, Steve is really making an impact on guitar production as well. And Steve Vai was kind of the first to really make a 7-string the way that we use them now. A lot of times 7-strings before had another higher string on them, and it gave you like a little higher octave. But Steve Vai decided to put an extra low string on it, which gave it that low end and really brought 7 strings into rock music. So if you think about all these metal bands that are using 7 strings or even 8 strings to get that really heavy sound, you can thank Steve Vai for that because he was really the first to do that. This is a fact that you might not be aware of, so I am going to throw it in here. In 1994, Steve Vai actually started working with Ozzy Osbourne on the Osmosis record, and he actually wrote a bunch of songs with Ozzy, and they're yet to be released. I don't know if they're out there somewhere, I don't know if we're ever going to hear these songs, but Sharon decided that Steve wasn't the image that the band needed, and she kind of shut that down, and I don't blame Sharon. I think that Steve and Ozzy maybe don't go as well together. And that's when Zakk Wylde came on board. So I agree with Sharon on that one. As much as I love Steve and I think it would have been cool to see Steve with Ozzy, I think Zakk was perfect and she could see that. And I still would like to hear what he worked on with Ozzy. I think it'd be really cool. In the same year, in 1994, Steve Vai won a Grammy for his performance of a song with Frank Zappa. I don't remember which song it was, so sorry about that. But Steve Vai has won a Grammy, so how cool is that? I think the next biggest thing to talk about in Steve's career is in 1995 when G3 was first formed with Joe Satriani, Steve Vai himself, and Eric Johnson. This was kind of like a guitar virtuoso, you know, mega mashup. So awesome. I would really love to see a G3. I'm not sure if another one will happen. I've just not been able to get to one, but I would like to see that. So it's really cool that that has continued so many years with even different musicians, and I think it's a really, really cool idea that was formed by Joe and Steve. There are many other things that could be talked about in the life of Steve Vai. I did just kind of want to hit the highlights of those earlier big accomplishments. Of course, there are many other albums that have been released that have been amazing. You know, many awesome performances. His work with Generation X, which is awesome. So much. And then I think the most recent couple things would be the Hydra. Him releasing and Violet in the Teeth of the Hydra song and then actually playing it in the video. That was revolutionary. That was big for the guitar world. Something like that hadn't been done in a really long time, and I think that Steve really, even though Steve Vai is so untouchable at this point, he's so good, he's so well known, that he's never going anywhere, but I think that the Hydra really like solidified the fact that I am Steve Vai and I can do literally anything with this instrument, and I'm going to show you that I can. Like, I think that was just a really awesome statement that he's still got it and he is, you know, as awesome as he is. And the most recent, I guess, piece of Vai history would be the tour with Joe Satriani, which was never done before. And I was very fortunate to be a part of that, to get to go to one of the shows, have such an amazing time. I have a full video on that if you want to see it. But the fact that those two had never toured together alone was kind of crazy, and they did it this year. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed the history lesson. That got a little longer than I expected. But I really love talking about Steve Vai, and I did a paper on this back in high school, and I haven't really gotten to talk about all of it since then. So it was kind of fun to just sit here, even though I'm talking to a camera, to get to talk about my favorite guitar player. Alright, now that we have discussed all the history of Steve Vai, I would like to show you guys all of my Steve Vai memorabilia around my room, because I have collected a lot of cool stuff over the last few years, and I think you guys would really like to see it. Let's just start with the Whitesnake era stuff. I'm kind of not sure how to organize all this, but let's just start with that stuff. Alright, the things I'm going to show you right now came in a collection from Julian's Auction House, and these are really special because these are from Steve Vai's home, his personal collection. If you didn't remember or you didn't see, a couple years ago, Steve Vai sold a ton of stuff from his personal collection and archives to Julian's auction house, and these were the items that I chose. They all came together. I have some prints from this time period and I don't know where they are. I need to find those. So sorry that I'm not going to show those today, but okay, so this is like the special edition box set discs of the CD, the demos, the different mixes. I think there's like, yeah, there's a live DVD in here. This is, you know, like a normal like box set. This is so cool. This was Steve Vai's VIP, you know, backstage pass one night. Not sure what show this is from, but either way, it's Steve Vai, you know, his VIP backstage pass that got him with the band and everything. So that's so cool. This was back in 1989 on tour with Steve Vai. Like, so cool. This is just a ticket from one of the shows. You can't really read it because it's very faded and old, but this is just a ticket from when Steve was with Whitesnake. This is Steve Vai's personal Whitesnake Slip of the Tongue album, and I think this is so cool. This was in his house. He probably played this thing on the record player in the Harmony hat. What? So cool. I absolutely love this. There's so many good songs on this album too. Really love it. Next, we can take a look at the magazines. This one is a more recent one. This is when the Hydra and Violet came out, Guitar World. This is the most recent Guitar World with Joe and Steve. This is Joe and Steve back in the day. How cool is that photo? Just as Riley has hair. What? So cool. Here's a Whitesnake era guitar magazine. And we got another Whitesnake era guitar magazine. I really like this photo of these two. I think those guys have commented that they were good friends and they didn't really leave the band on bad terms. It's just kind of a creative time to take a break from the band. But I like that they didn't really have problems. They just decided to, you know, end the band. Alright, next up I've got a big stack of stuff, so let's just go through it. This is just a tour program. I did not go to this tour. This is the Passion and Warfare 25th Anniversary World Tour. I should have remembered that. That's awesome. This came with my little bag from when I saw Steve at the Violet tour. Just a signed lithograph. This is from the Story of Light World Tour. Just another tour program. I got these off his website. I just think they're neat. And I like the photos inside. This is a signed Steve Vai and Violet album. This one I got personally signed at a concert. I think you can see that. This is the Passion and Warfare, and it is the special edition pink vinyl. Here we go with a Generation X. This is just like a live recording album. Really good. And this is G3. I think this is 2005. So that was the year I was born. So yeah, this is the Satriani, Vai, and Petrucci G3. Also have this laminate badge from when I saw Steve once. This one I got last time when I saw Steve. This is just a tour poster and they signed it that night. Let's talk about the Steve Vai gear that I have and guitars. So first up we have this Carbon Legacy Drive. This is not currently made anymore. I snagged one and I really like this. I think it's really good. I think it sounds great. I actually really recommend if you can find one of these at a good price, maybe grabbing one, because I think it sounds perfect if you're looking for that sound. The Steve Vai, I can get a really good Steve Vai like Whitesnake tone, Passion and Warfare tone out of this. So I really enjoy playing this, even though I haven't used it in a little while. I think I definitely need to. Alright, here we go. I get to talk about my favorite thing in the world, my white gem premium. If you guys have been here for any length of time, you know I absolutely love this guitar so much. And that is why I wanted to talk about the gem for a second. I am so thankful for Steve Vai creating this guitar, because if someone sat me down, like let's say Ibanez approached me and was like, make whatever guitar you want, you tell us the specifications, we will make it, we will modify it, we will work on this guitar until it's perfect for you. And then, you know, unlimited resources and money. I would tell them I just want a gem, because I couldn't change anything about this guitar. it is absolutely perfect for me. Something about this guitar, I feel connected to it. And although I have a lot of other guitars, I am a gear addict. I'm sorry, I'm guilty. But I could just have this guitar and never complain because I love it so much. It's not just that it's absolutely gorgeous, because it is, but it just plays so well for me. And I know that's not the same for everyone. Not everyone can say they love this guitar, but I absolutely do. I think she's gorgeous. I think she plays so good. And it doesn't hurt that Mr. Vai himself signed it. So that was really cool. That was the first time I met Steve. I've got a picture of it right here. And he signed this guitar that day. And that was an incredible day that I will never forget. That was very, very, very special. Next up we have my floral blue gem. This one's a little different. It's got some different pickups in it. This has Gravity Storm pickups, which I really like them. I really love the blue in this fretboard. I think it's so pretty. I think this guitar is gorgeous as well. It's a little hard to show up here, but you can see how beautiful that finish is. When I looked at this online, I was like, I don't want it. It's kind of boring. It's kind of flat looking. I saw it in a Guitar Center one time, and I was like, I gotta have it. And I didn't buy it that day, but my dad actually picked it up for Christmas, and then I was so surprised because he told me that it had sold that day and that I wasn't going to be able to buy it, and I was actually really sad about it because at the time they were maybe sold out. I think they're still in production. I'm not exactly sure, but anyways, they were hard to get at the time that I got this, and he surprised me with it, so absolutely love this one. I forgot to mention that that last one was also signed. I took it second time I saw Steve. Okay, this one is a Gem Junior, and I had it painted. I'm sorry about the glare, guys. I know it's bad. This one is also signed by Steve. I'm not gonna really talk about this too much because I think I've talked about it before. This is not what I asked for when I got this thing painted. I wanted it to be like the Passion and Warfare guitar, and this is pastel. Like, you guys know what I'm talking about. If you guys know what the Passion and Warfare swirl, what he was playing when he was playing with Whitesnake, it doesn't look like this. And while I do think it's cool, it is not what I paid hundreds of dollars for, and the company, or I guess the person who was running the business, was not nice to deal with, and it was kind of a bit of a mess for a minute. So yeah, I mean, I still love it. I mean, it's still a Steve Vai guitar, and make the best of it. Steve Vai actually said he liked it when I got it signed, but I am not super happy with this. But, you know, it's still a really cool custom guitar, and I can't complain too much. I also have an Ibanez 7-string Universe, but it is currently needing some repairs, and it's in a case with all of the parts and stuff separated. So I'm not going to show that to you guys right now, but I do have one in my collection. I am going to show you guys a clip from a Vai birthday Ultra Jam that I was a part of. If you don't know what that is, it's where a ton of guitarists have come together and have played about 20 seconds on a Steve Vai song. This time I think we did Sandman Cloud Mist, and I was very thankful to have been asked to be a part of it. So I'm going to play you my part. It's very short, but I'll definitely link the actual jam so you guys can check out what everyone else did. I had a lot of fun writing this solo. I did not just sit down and improv like I normally do stuff like this. I actually sat down and musically tried to write a little mini solo, so I'm very proud of what I was able to come up with for this. Guys, what more can be said? Steve Vai is amazing. I've had so much fun just talking about him and his music and everything he's done in his life and all of his, you know, work with Ibanez. There's been so much that we talked about today, and I had a great time doing it. I'm sure there's things that I've left out. Leave them in the comments. I could talk all day about Steve because he is just, to me, so great. Such an amazing guitar player. I am personally just very, very thankful for his work as a musician because I don't think I would be as driven and as excited about learning to play the guitar if it weren't for him. He definitely just motivates me more than anyone else, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I really, really love that I've met him 3 times, and he has been super genuine, super nice. You know, they say don't meet your heroes, but I've met Steve Vai 3 times, and he has been absolutely incredible to talk to. So that says something about a person. If you're that famous, you can be not nice to people if you choose to, but he's very nice, and he's still humble. So I appreciate those times that I've met Steve, and he's, you know, taking the time to talk to me and things like that. So I think I'm done talking. I've sat down here and I've talked forever and ever. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Before we go, I'm going to roll just some pictures that either I like of Steve or pictures when I've met Steve. So we're going to have a little slideshow here at the end, so I hope you enjoy that. Also, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I have a merch collection out now. So I do have some Steve Vai designs. If you guys are interested in checking that out, definitely click the link down below, and it definitely helps me out because most of my videos are not monetized, and this is currently my job. So it helps me out a lot if you guys support me by buying merch. Make sure you head over to my Instagram, give me a follow there. Again, like this video, subscribe, all the stuff, you know it. And I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the pictures. Bye.